Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. Two prominent House Republicans enter the race for Speaker. Jim Jordan of Ohio, the Judiciary Committee chair, and Steve Scalise of Louisiana, who is now Majority Leader. A race that came about after the House's vote on Tuesday to remove Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California. First time in American history, such a motion to vacate the Speaker's chair has been successful. Coming up, we hear from Congressman Jordan and talk about the election of a new speaker with Politico's congressional reporter Anthony Adragna. Plus, President Joe Biden and the Senate Republican and Democratic leaders talk about ousting of Speaker McCarthy. And former President Donald Trump is asked whether he would take the job of House Speaker if he's elected to it. The newest U.S. Senator, Laphonza Butler, Democrat of California, reflects on the service of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein, whose seat she now fills one day before Senator Feinstein's memorial service. Senator Ben Cardin, Democrat from Maryland, leads his first Foreign Relations Committee hearing as chairman, having taken over for Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, who stepped down after a federal criminal indictment. President Biden's second nominee for FAA Administrator, Michael Whitaker, has a confirmation hearing before the Senate Commerce Committee. And a nationwide emergency alert test goes out to millions of phones, TVs, and radios for the first time in 5 years. And now to the race for Speaker. Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, Judiciary Committee chair, and also a Freedom Caucus member, became the first official candidate for Speaker of the House today, a position now vacant after Tuesday's historic vote to remove Speaker Kevin McCarthy. In a Dear Colleague letter to other Republican House members, Congressman Jordan writes, "We are at a critical crossroad in our nation's history. Now is the time for our Republican conference to come together to keep our promises to Americans. The problems we face are challenging, but they are not insurmountable. We can focus on the changes that improve the country and unite us in offering real solutions. But no matter what we do, we must do it together as a conference." Then Congressman Steve Scalise, Republican of Louisiana, the majority leader, jumped into the race for Speaker, writing to his House Republican colleagues about the support he received when he was shot during the congressional baseball practice in 2017, suffering life-threatening injuries. He wrote, "God already gave me another chance at life. I believe we were all put here for a purpose. This next chapter won't be easy, but I know what it takes to fight, and I'm prepared for the battles that lie ahead." Congressman Jordan also spoke to reporters today on Capitol Hill about his candidacy.
What promises are you making to the conference? Policy-wise, agenda-wise?
The agenda is what I spoke about on the floor, Mono. We need to pass the bills that need to be passed. We've done a lot of that. The biggest one, of course, is H.R. 2, the Immigration Border Security legislation. Frankly, I wish Chuck Schumer would bring it up. He can amend it. He can change it, but take it up. It's the biggest. I think Mayor Adams is somewhere in Central America as we speak. This is how bad this problem is. Democrats get it. Republicans get it. Independent Americans get it. So bring it up. Make changes to it. Then let's go to a conference committee. Hash it out. We'll have Republicans, Democrats, hash it out. They'll get a majority of Democrats from the Senate. We'll have a majority of Republicans. But we'll sit down, hash it out, put that bill up for a vote. That's how the system works. But they won't even take it up. They won't take it up. They just keep talking. Meanwhile, Eric Adams says he talks about how it's hurting his city, one of our great cities. So I do not understand that. Just take our bill up.
What about Ukraine? Are you willing to move forward with an aid package for Ukraine if you're Speaker?
I'm against that. What I understand is at some point we're going to have to deal with this appropriation process in the right way. And we're going to try to do that in the next, what are we down to, 41 days. The most pressing issue on Americans' mind is not Ukraine. It is the border situation, and it is crime on the streets, and everybody knows that. So let's address those. If the Senate wants to send us something on other issues, that's their prerogative. But that's what we got to do.
Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, candidate for House Speaker, today with reporters. More on the race for Speaker of the House. We're joined now by Anthony Adragna, Politico's congressional reporter. Thank you for being with us. The headline at your article at Politico.com, and I know you may not have written this, it reads, "It's on, the bare-knuckle battle for House GOP leadership spots begins." How is this race shaping up?
It's shaping up chaotically, and I think we don't yet have a good sense for how quickly this race is going to be settled. Something I've heard from a lot of rank-and-file members that I've spoken with today is that nobody has a clear path to 218 yet. That may change. Obviously, the House is out right now, and they're going to be sounding each other out at a candidate forum next Tuesday with the idea of holding an election on Wednesday. But I think even at this point, with two declared candidates, it's not clear whether or not there's a real clear path for somebody to get to the support that they need to be elected Speaker. So a lot of fluid dynamics in this race, which is still unfolding.
Are we hearing whether any other candidates may jump in for Speaker?
My colleague Olivia Beavers reported that Congressman Kevin Hern is taking a close look at the race. There have been other names that have been bandied about as well, although we've not heard a ton of serious rumblings yet that other people may get in. But I think what we may also, one possibility is that if neither Steve Scalise nor Jim Jordan is able to get those votes that they need to be elected Speaker, I do wonder if you might see somebody else come up, kind of somebody who isn't on our radar at this point. So obviously that's many steps down the road, but I don't know that we've seen the full roster of those that are going to throw their hats into the ring at this point.
To get to 218, a majority, it's going to take some of those 8 Republicans who voted to remove Speaker McCarthy, so they still hold the balance of power. Do we know what they want?
Well, they in many ways do hold quite a bit of power, but I would actually look to a different faction right now. I think there's a number of people, this is something that I've heard from now multiple members today, who are just so upset with how things played out yesterday on the floor with former Speaker McCarthy that they're, not prepared to back anybody yet. And, whether or not that changes and they ultimately do select a candidate, we'll have to see. But I think they're going to have to hear a lot. One of the things we've heard mentioned a lot of times today has been the need for rules to be changed so that you can't just trigger these ousters of speakers with one person. So I think you're going to have to also, address a lot of the concerns that some of those members may have. So there's a lot that whoever emerges as sort of the front runner here or the ultimate victor that they're going to have to do to address those concerns within the conference.
We're talking with Anthony Adragna from Politico. What role might the temporary Speaker, Patrick McHenry, play?
It's a great question, and something that I've heard is just sort of that we're in kind of an unprecedented space here. Obviously, there had never been a successful effort to oust the Speaker up until yesterday, and so this caretaking role really hasn't been tested before. I've heard from several members that they view this as ministerial. They've consulted with the parliamentarian and the Rules Committee, and they believe essentially he's going to be, running the election for Speaker, making sure the House is able to function in some capacity. But the real limits of this power have yet to be tested. They certainly haven't been forced up against legal scrutiny. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how he approaches this. He's not been speaking with members of the press in the hallway. So I think we'll have to wait and see exactly how expansively Republicans view that office.
And also, what role could he play perhaps influencing who the next Speaker will be?
Yeah, another great point. I think, he was obviously is quite close with former Speaker McCarthy. So as to whether or not how much sway that holds with the conference at this point, I think, that remains uncertain. But he's definitely someone to watch as this race takes shape and as we get a little bit more serious with people trying to rally and ratchet up support.
Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio and Steve Scalise of Louisiana making their announcements that they're running for Speaker. What are their campaign pitches to the members at the start of the race?
Well, I think that's what we're going to have to wait and see. Obviously, it's been there's been a lot of talk of needing to address the southern border, of trying to get the appropriations process down to each of the 12 spending bills. Those are going to be key priorities. But something we've heard from members today is really that they're still trying to figure out what the differences here may be. Both of these are obviously members who have lengthy conservative voting records. Both have been prominent. Leader Scalise has been obviously in Republican leadership for quite a while. Congressman Jordan is obviously the leader of the Judiciary Committee. So they're well known throughout the conference. And I think how they distinguish between themselves is going to be something worthy of close attention as the race takes shape in the next week.
And finally, I'll go back to the headline at your article at Politico.com. You referred to leadership spots. So while we're focusing on the Speaker, depending upon who gets elected there, it's going to open up and cause a cascade effect.
Absolutely, and that's definitely something that's worth watching. We've seen the Majority Whip, Tom Emmer, announce his intention to run for Majority Leader. But a lot of those offices are going to depend on who ultimately emerges at the top. Obviously, if Leader Scalise was not elevated to Speaker, then he might opt to stay in the Majority Leader position. So anyway, there's going to be a whole cascade of people moving those chairs around depending on how the Speaker election emerges. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what this looks like in terms of the other side on Republican leadership.
Anthony Adragna, Politico Congressional reporter. His stories at Politico.com and on X, formerly Twitter, at Anthony Adragna. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congressman Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, who sponsored the resolution that removed Speaker McCarthy from Speaker, did a Newsmax interview today. And he said, "I know this, if it's Speaker Jim Jordan or Speaker Steve Scalise, there will be very few conservatives in the country who don't see this as a monumental upgrade over Speaker McCarthy." A story from TheHill.com, GOP leadership booted another top Democrat, Steny Hoyer, Democrat from Maryland, out of his Capitol hideaway office Wednesday morning amid the fallout from an unprecedented vote Tuesday to oust former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Congressman Hoyer joins Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, who was told by Speaker Pro Tem Patrick Henry to vacate her office so he could take it over. The moves signal the anger among GOP leaders towards Democrats who voted with a small group of far-right Republicans to remove Speaker McCarthy as the House leader. That reporting from The Hill. President Joe Biden today spoke about the House vote to remove Speaker McCarthy, the election of a new speaker, and, as he put it, the need to work together for the American people.
I'll be very brief. The House will now reorganize and select a new speaker. I know it's going to take some time, but I remind everyone, we have a lot of work to do, and the American people expect us to get it done. The argument we reached was all about what comes next, but we had an agreement. We reached an agreement over the weekend. Funds for government, only another 40 days. We cannot and should not again be faced with an 11th hour decision of brinksmanship that threatens to shut down the government. And we know what we have to do. We have to get it done in a timely fashion. More than anything, we need to change the poisonous atmosphere in Washington. You know, we have strong disagreements, but we need to stop seeing each other as enemies. We need to talk to one another, listen to one another, work with one another, and we can do that. I join with Minority Leader Jeffries in saying that our Republican colleagues remain committed to working in a bipartisan fashion. We were prepared to do it as well for the good of the American people. Twice in the last 6 months, both houses came together on a bipartisan basis, once to avoid default, once to keep the government open. And while we should never have been in a situation in the first place, I'm grateful that leaders on both sides came together, including former Speaker McCarthy, to do the right thing.
President Biden today at the White House at the start of an event that was on a different topic, student loan forgiveness. At the end of the president's prepared remarks, he answered reporters' questions, and a few were on the upcoming election of the new House Speaker and the House Republicans agreeing to a temporary government funding bill without the additional money he requested for Ukraine.
Mr. disarray on Capitol Hill after your conversation with allies yesterday worry you that you won't be able to deliver the aid that the U.S. has promised to Ukraine?
It does worry me, but I know there are a majority of members of the House and Senate in both parties who have said that they support funding Ukraine. With your, I'm going to be announcing very shortly a major speech I'm going to make on this issue and why it's critically important for the United States and our allies that we keep our commitment.
Mr. President, are you also concerned about the rest of your domestic and foreign policy initiatives being imperiled because of what we saw happen yesterday, the dysfunction in Congress, the chaos that we saw on the House side? Does that concern you in any way?
The dysfunction always concerns me. The programs that we have argued over, we passed bipartisanly, I'm not concerned that they're going to all of a sudden come in and try to undo them, although there will be some. There will be some, I'm sure. There's half a dozen or more extreme MAGA Republicans who would like to eliminate just about everything I've done. But I don't think that's going to get there.
President Biden at the White House. The Senate Appropriations Committee held a closed briefing today for senators with Defense Department witnesses, and it was titled Update on U.S. Assistance to Ukrainian Air Defenses. And after some senators came out to speak with reporters, including John Hoeven, Republican from North Dakota, who talked about not only what he heard in the briefing about air defense, but also a possible way, he says, to get the Senate and House to approve more military aid for Ukraine.
What are the major things that you guys are concerned with when it comes to Ukraine's air defense? Is that F-16s right now? Is that other munitions trying to get to them so they can send off? What's the
Yeah, right. So the air defense is really important because obviously that's what protects their civilian population. So it's incredibly important. They've got the Patriot batteries. They're also interested in Iron Dome as well, just because of the different capabilities. So we're looking at all of that. And then obviously looking at, their air capabilities too. As you know, we're training their pilots on the F-16 aircraft. And so, again, that's an important part. And, we're very focused on what do we need to do, not only to make sure that Ukraine's in a position to win, not just have a stalemate, right, but also protect the civilian population.
And while trying to do all of that, now the House does not have a speaker. We don't know how long they will be speakerless and thus unable to pass legislation. Obviously, it looks like there's going to be an effort in the Senate here to pass a separate Ukraine supplemental.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about the fate of that in the House right now?
So I think one of the things we've really got to look at doing, and we were already looking at it on the CR, and that is combining something on border security with assistance for Ukraine. And I think that's a way to bring more people together and say, okay, these are both important. We've got to stop that flow at the southern border. Obviously, assisting Ukraine's important. Let's see if we can't work something out and get a big bipartisan majority to do both.
Senator John Hoeven, Republican from North Dakota, speaking with reporters after the closed-door meeting for senators held by the Appropriations Committee with officials from the Defense Department about aid to Ukrainian air defense. USA Today reports that Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., Oksana Makarova, said that she had begun reaching out to possible successors to ousted House Speaker Kevin McCarthy with an eye toward continuing the flow of aid to the war effort. More reaction to the removal of the House Speaker from the Senate leaders. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, speaking on the Senate floor.
Yesterday, a small band of MAGA extremists plunged Congress into pandemonium. For the first time in American history, a Speaker of the House of Representatives has been removed from his position at the hands of radicals that he empowered from day one. What happened yesterday is a failure entirely of the House Republicans' own doing, a disaster in the making, to the great detriment of Congress and to the detriment of the American people. Speaker Boehner, Speaker Ryan, and now Speaker McCarthy have all learned the same hard lesson. You cannot allow the hard right to run the House or the country, and all three of them were chased out by the MAGA right. You cannot allow a small band of MAGA extremists, which represent just a very small percentage of the views of the country, to tell the overwhelming majority of Americans what to do. But Republican problems with MAGA extremism seep far deeper than any single leader. MAGA extremism is a poison that the House GOP has refused to confront for years. And until the mainstream House Republicans deal with this issue, the chaos will continue.
The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, today on the Senate floor. The Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, talked about the removal of Speaker McCarthy at a news conference today. Senator McConnell said he doesn't think a future speaker should face the same threat.
I'd like to start by thanking Speaker McCarthy for his service. We had a great personal relationship, trying to lead two very different parts of the American government. I think he has much to be proud of. We avoided a government shutdown. We did the inevitable with regard to the debt ceiling. And I'm one person who's extremely grateful for his service. I have no advice to give to House Republicans, except one. I hope whoever the next speaker is gets rid of the motion to vacate. I think it makes the speaker's job impossible, and the American people expect us to have a functioning government.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, at a news conference today with other Senate Republican leaders. A story from NBC News begins, does Donald Trump want to be Speaker of the House? It goes on, it's a question that has emerged in the chaotic afterglow of a collection of House conservatives succeeding in ousting House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. So far, the former president has done little to downplay the political intrigue. Donald Trump's name was immediately floated by supporters after the successful vote to depose Speaker McCarthy. And a Donald Trump advisor Tuesday night told NBC News that Republican members of the House had already been asking Donald Trump to serve as an interim speaker. That from NBC News. Donald Trump spoke to reporters about this today. He said for now he's focusing on winning the 2024 presidential election.
Who should be Speaker?
Who should be Speaker, Mr. President?
A lot of people have been calling me about Speaker. All I can say is we'll do whatever's best for the country and for the Republican Party.
Would you take a job?
Great people.
Marjorie Taylor.
We have some great people.
Would you take a job?
A lot of people have asked me about it. I'm focused. You know, we're leading. I don't know you. I'm sure you don't read too much in the papers. So we're leading by like 50 points for president. You know, my focus is totally on that. If I can help them during the process, I would do it. But we have some great people in the Republican Party that could do a great job as Speaker.
Well, what about Marjorie you? Taylor Greene called for you to be Speaker yesterday. Did you accept?
I think she's a wonderful woman, Marjorie. A lot of other people have told me that too. I'll do whatever it is to help, but my focus, my total focus is being president and, quite honestly, making America great again, because we are living in a country in decline. This is a country that's failing badly. We're not respected in the world. Interest rates are through the roof. Taxes are through the roof. Inflation is horrible. What it's done to us, it's eating us alive. Energy is now over $5. I was at $1.87. It's over $5. What's happened to our country with Afghanistan, that horrible removal, the most embarrassing moment, I think, in our country's history. So I'm running for president. I'm up by 40 and 50 points and more in some cases. But whatever I can do to help with regard to Speaker is good. By the way, I'm also leading Biden by a lot. If I wasn't, I wouldn't have trials like this. Thank you very much.
Donald Trump, former president and Republican presidential candidate, with reporters outside the courtroom in New York City, where he has been attending the civil fraud trial against him, also against his sons and his company. The U.S. Constitution says the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers. Does not say the Speaker must be a member of Congress. And there was a reference in the question to Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican from Georgia. She did post on X, formerly Twitter, the only candidate for Speaker I am currently supporting is President Donald J. Trump. He has a proven 4-year record as President of the United States. He received a record number of Republican votes of any Republican presidential candidate. We can make him Speaker and then elect him President. He will make America great again. That post from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. And House Republicans are expecting to meet next Tuesday to discuss possible candidates for Speaker and have a closed-door secret ballot vote on Wednesday on who they might choose. The casket of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat from California, lying in state today at San Francisco City Hall. She was mayor of San Francisco. Other politicians and the public able to pay their respects. A memorial service, a public one, will be held Thursday on the steps of that building, 4 p.m. Eastern. It'll be live on C-SPAN television and here on C-SPAN radio, streamed at cspan.org and also on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. Senator Feinstein died last week at the age of 90, having served over 30 years in the Senate. Her replacement, just appointed by the governor and sworn in, is Senator Laphonza Butler, also a Democrat. She spoke to reporters today in Washington.
Good afternoon. I am just honored beyond belief to be asked by Leader Schumer today to offer some reflections on just my first whole day standing in, sitting in the seat of Senator Dianne Feinstein. As mayor, of San Francisco, first woman mayor of San Francisco, to come into the United States Senate in the Year of the Woman, to lead all of the legislative battles that you have heard and have read over the last few days and just here today. Senator Feinstein is an example of the gift of Emily's List. She had the courage to want to run. She worked hard to win. And when she won, she did the work to change the world. And to be able to sit in her seat, knowing that I will never be able to fill her shoes, is the honor of a lifetime. I remember when I first met Senator Feinstein, 2009, in her district office in San Francisco. She was convening stakeholders to talk about some important issues relative to immigration. And she brought us a group of community leaders and labor leaders into her district office. And the first thing that she did was not tell us what was going on in Washington. She didn't tell us the role she was playing in negotiating language or bills. She asked us how the community was feeling. And every story and every interaction that I have had with Senator Feinstein before her passing and even since has reminded me very much of her approach to the work, starting with the people of California. It's definitely the example that I intend to have learned from and want to offer my colleagues on behalf of the legacy of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Thank you, Leader Schumer, for inviting me.
Thank you. You're going to do great.
Senator Laphonza Butler, Democrat from California, today in Washington. The Senate has canceled legislative business for Thursday so senators can attend Senator Feinstein's funeral in San Francisco. Washington Today continues in a moment.
When citizens are truly informed, our republic thrives. Get informed straight from the source on C-SPAN. Unfiltered, unbiased, word for word. From the nation's capital to wherever you are. Because the opinion that matters the most is your own. This is what democracy looks like. C-SPAN, powered by cable.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast wherever you find your podcasts and on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. Story from the Washington Times. Newly installed Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Ben Cardin, Democrat from Maryland, is moving quickly to put his stamp on the panel, announcing a freeze on new military aid and arms sales to Egypt because of the Cairo government's poor human rights record, and calling for a reevaluation of U.S. aid to Azerbaijan after its forcible takeover of a large Armenian-majority enclave in Nagorno-Karabakh. The moves announced Tuesday are a direct fallout from the federal corruption charges lodged last month against former committee chairman Bob Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, who was forced to surrender the gavel as a result of the indictment. Among other charges, the New Jersey Democrat was accused of taking bribes to help the government of Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Mr. Menendez has denied the allegations. That reporting from the Washington Times. Senator Cardin chaired his first Foreign Relations Committee hearing today.
This hearing of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. Let me start by making something crystal clear to the international community, to the U.S. foreign policy community, to our nation's allies and adversaries. As this committee moves forward, we will continue our work on behalf of the American people as we have done for more than 2 centuries. The world faces challenges as well as opportunities. This committee, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, its members and staff play a critical role in meeting the challenges America faces in national security. And as I accept the chairmanship with great humility, thanks to the support of our members, thanks to the support of Ranking Member Risch, and thanks to our dedicated and hardworking committee staff, we will continue to advance our values and national interests on the global stage. My priority is simple: to strengthen America's diplomacy, to make sure our diplomats have the tools that they need and Congress provides the appropriate oversight in carrying out that responsibility. All needs to be done in promoting American values of democracy, anti-corruption, good governance, human rights, transparency. These are the values that give strength to America's foreign policy.
Senator Ben Cardin, Democrat from Maryland, the new Foreign Relations Committee chair. He'll be in that position while the previous chair, Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, faces a federal indictment on bribery and corruption charges. He mentioned the committee's ranking Republican, who stays the same, Jim Risch of Idaho, today welcoming the new chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the chairmanship. You and I have worked together on a number of things in the past, and I look forward to doing so in the future. For those of us who watch this committee, changes are inevitable on the committee, but we have a process in place for seamless transition. There is nothing more nonpartisan and bipartisan than the national interests and the national security of the United States of America. And this committee certainly leads us forward in that regard. Together, we'll move that forward and appreciate working with you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Jim Risch, Republican from Idaho, Foreign Relations Committee ranking member at today's hearing. The committee now led by the new chair, Senator Ben Cardin, who could give up the chairman's post if Senator Menendez, the previous chair, is cleared of the criminal charges against him. As mentioned earlier, Senator Cardin has put a hold on military aid to Egypt. Reaction today from the Biden administration, State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel at his news conference.
Senator Ben Cardin, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has blocked the $235 million in military fund to Egypt until Egypt makes progress in human rights issues. What will happen now with the package that the Secretary has already waived the block on, and did the department answer Senator Cardin?
So we're going to continue to engage closely with not only the Egyptian government but also Congress about how these funds will be used, consistent with our commitment to U.S. Egypt strategic partnership that advances our shared vision for a secure and prosperous region, and one that enables tangible and sustained progress on human rights issues. I will just note, Michelle, that Secretary Blinken stands by his decision that is in the U.S. national security interest to waive certain certain conditions related to the fiscal year 2022 foreign military financing assistance for Egypt, the $235 million number that you laid out. We have obligated a total of $1.215 billion in FMF funding that Egypt will receive for FY 2022. We're continuing to work through these issues with Congress and our partners in Egypt, and that is going to continue to be the case. I'm not going to get ahead of that process.
And what effects this block will have on these aids?
Again, this is a process that we're working through with the Congress, and look forward to continuing to engage with Chairman Cardin and SFRC on this as well.
State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel at his news conference today at the State Department. Reuters has a story that says on Saturday, Senator Cardin intended to hold back some funds despite an announcement earlier this month that Secretary of State Antony Blinken had waived human rights restrictions on $235 million of the aid, citing security benefits to the United States. It is currently withholding $85 million of the aid, a fraction of the $1.3 billion a year allocated for Egypt. Another story from Reuters, the Biden administration's nominee to head the Federal Aviation Administration said on Wednesday the agency must address a persistent air traffic controller shortage that has caused flight delays. Nominee Michael Whitaker, a former deputy FAA administrator, told the Senate Commerce Committee he would support opening a second air traffic controller academy to address staffing. Michael Whitaker also said the FAA must address a spate of near-miss airplane incidents and, quote, really drive the most serious ones down to a level of zero. That needs to be our target. Again, that was reporting from Reuters. C-SPAN covered today's confirmation hearing. Here is Senator Maria Cantwell, Democrat from Washington State, the committee chair, questioning the nominee, Michael Whitaker, about safety.
The world of aviation since you left the FAA has changed significantly. You mentioned the 737 MAX crashes, the COVID pandemic, how we kept airlines moving during that time period. Recently, the NOTAM system outages, near misses, things of that nature. What the FAA needs to do, I think, are even greater challenges since when you were there before. So I appreciate you saying you wanted to fully implement the law, so thank you. Thank you for that. What are your strategies for building a resilient safety culture at the FAA? And what do you think it takes at this point in time to have that safety culture? I just want to mention we were able to implement the Samiastumo Air Grant Program, and I see it already paying dividends on Capitol Hill and at agencies because we have the smartest technology people here helping on the very technical details of aviation. The underlying AXA bill has the integrated project team. Sometimes around here we call them the graybeards. While I'm anxious to see how the graybeards assess technology, as you mentioned in your statement, that may not be disclosed by a manufacturer, and yet you have to understand the huge technology change that is happening. I mean, I wonder at sometime if we shouldn't be looking at a CTO. In some ways, NASA is our CTO, but maybe on the implementation of things as we look at the NOTAM outage and other things, I mean, maybe in addition to the forward thinking that NASA does for the agency, maybe a CTO or these integrated project team leaders are a key to our future. But if you could talk about what it is that you think we need to build in that intersection of changes of technology and safety.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. It's a great question. I think there are a number of aspects to this. We need to build a strong leadership team, make sure we have the right people in the right positions and make sure they're permanent. And we need a strong bench. So I think focusing on making sure we have the expertise in the organization is going to be key. Safety culture doesn't create itself, and I think you have to constantly emphasize that it is our first mission above all else, and everything has to be focused on that. We have to hold the line on pressure to reduce standards and make sure we're keeping this system as safe as possible. The technology issue is a very interesting one. There are a lot of new technologies coming into the agency that you can't prove out through flight testing necessarily. Software is a good example of that. New technologies that interact with each other in ways that maybe we haven't experienced in the past. So I think it is good to look at having somebody with the appropriate technology experience who can see the big picture when a new aircraft with new technology comes in, how the pieces fit together, and where we can look for risks that may not be apparent otherwise.
FAA Administrator nominee Michael Whitaker, questioned by Senator Maria Cantwell, Democrat of Washington State, Chair of the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. The ranking Republican on the committee is Ted Cruz of Texas, and he asked the nominee about hiring and training more air traffic controllers.
The number of air traffic controllers was a significant concern during your tenure as Deputy Administrator at FAA. You repeatedly touted the FAA's plans to hire 6,000 controllers over 5 years. Years later, unfortunately, the shortage has only grown worse, leading to congestion and frequent delays, especially in the New York airspace. As you know, all newly hired air traffic controllers must complete a training program at the current FAA Academy. But that academy is limited to only about 1,800 individuals per year, and it takes several years to fully train an air traffic controller. Realistically, considering that the attrition rate at the academy and the field training process, we need to hire significantly more than 1,800 each year for several years. If you are confirmed as FAA Administrator, and you look at the issue of controller training and you find what has been consistently said to be the case, that a major choke point in the controller pipeline is the physical limits of the ATC Academy, would you support a second ATC Academy to increase throughput?
Yes, Senator Cruz, I certainly would. And as we discussed, looking at those choke points and understanding where the problems lie will be an early priority, and we just simply need to solve this problem and figure out how to get it done.
I appreciate that commitment. Given that our system is facing a critical air traffic controller shortage, I would hope that one of the first things you would do would be to address this issue. And if you're confirmed quickly by the Senate, can you commit to addressing it and trying to turn it around by the end of the year?
I will, assuming I have enough time to do that, I will, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas, ranking member on the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, questioning FAA Administrator nominee Michael Whitaker. The story from CNN, Michael Whitaker is President Joe Biden's second nominee to lead the agency. His first nominee, Phil Washington, withdrew after facing criticism for his limited aviation experience and links to a political corruption investigation. And CNN also has this line: Michael Whitaker is expected to fare better. Wall Street today, the Dow up 127, NASDAQ up 176, S&P up 34. The payroll company ADP estimates the U.S. economy added 89,000 private sector jobs in September, below most expectations. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones, for instance, expecting 160,000 jobs. The U.S. Labor Department's official report on the September jobs numbers comes out on Friday. President Biden announced his administration has approved more student loan debt relief, $9 billion for an additional 125,000 borrowers in existing debt relief programs through what the White House calls fixes to the broken student loan system. White House says the new discharges of debt means total debt relief during the Biden administration so far is $127 billion for nearly 3.6 million borrowers. And this from Associated Press: some 75,000 Kaiser Permanente workers walked off the job Wednesday in multiple states, kicking off a major health care strike in an extraordinary year for U.S. labor organizing and work stoppages. Cell phones, TVs, and radios, millions of them across the United States, received the same emergency alert test at 2:18 p.m. Eastern. It was conducted by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, to alert all Americans across time zones at once in the event of a national emergency. Again, this was a test. It happened during the White House briefing with the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre.
Oh, there you go. Okay, thanks, everybody. I'm just kidding.
I turned mine off.
All right. I know, well, it works. Every couple of years, folks. Yeah. I don't even know what was the last statement, but go ahead. Go ahead, Patsy.
Thank you.
It's going to go on a rolling basis. Be ready.
The White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, at 2:18 p.m. Eastern, when that alert from the nationwide emergency alert test began. First one nationwide since 2018, although this alert system has been used locally for things like tornado warnings. Some reasons why your phone might not have gotten the alert: it's an older device, not compatible with wireless emergency alerts. It was turned off at the time, it was on airplane mode, or not within range of an active cell tower. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the latest stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. The newsletter word for word is free. Have a good night.